Welcome to Will's Personal Development Podcast, where we bring you data and science-backed answers and advice from billionaires.
What's up, everyone? My name is Will, and welcome to Will's Personal Development Podcast show. This is an exclusive audio podcast episode for all of my followers who prefer listening to audio in the car, at the gym, while shopping, while driving to work, while finding parking, all that fun stuff. And today we're going to be sharing with you how you can identify excuses, eliminate excuses, and destroy the mental blocks that are preventing you from moving forward and achieving success in your life. So this is actually going to be a shorter podcast. I do believe that sometimes podcasts, just like books, just like videos, are sometimes stretched on needlessly just to fill space. And I think this is a disservice to everyone. It's a disservice to the creator because they're not cramming in the most value in the most efficient time possible. It's a disservice to the consumer because we don't want to read a book that can be summarized in 50 pages that is turned into 500 pages because the reader was too insecure to be fine with a 50-page book, so they added a bunch of fluff. So we don't want that. This podcast is going to be very short compared to my standard 30-minute or hour-long podcast. And that's because sometimes you don't need all this needless information or repetition or just fluff to really solve problems. Now, how exactly do you identify excuses? The first big method is to get someone else. I think it's incredibly hard, if not impossible, to identify excuses on your own because by definition, you are biased and you don't realize that they are excuses. Now, maybe if you're incredibly conscious and a very smart person, you can identify some or maybe even half of your excuses that you tell yourself. But most of your excuses, by definition, they are hidden. You don't think of them as excuses. You think of them as real reasons why you can't do something or get something done. So the first thing to do is to get into a group or find a friend that you trust, hire a coach, get an accountability partner, find someone else to really hone in on your practices. Give them a full picture of your process, your stumbling blocks, and they will identify excuses for you. Ideally, you want to find someone who is well-versed and familiar with your area. There are free groups and paid ways of doing this. Now, for the free ways, there's certain groups for different activities. For example, I have been reading a great book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, and they have what they call nice guy peer groups all over the country where fellow nice guy who have similar problems can come together and help each other out. Now, what happens if you aren't necessarily a nice guy? Well, there's a website called meetup.com where you can find free groups to join based off your interests. And I think it's very thorough. There's groups for almost everything. And it's not perfect, of course. So, free only gets you so far. Meetup.com works great in large cities and even medium-sized cities. Once you get to smaller towns, if you live in smaller regions or people with, places with less traffic, really, first off, still try Meetup.com because it may still work, but sometimes it won't, and therefore you have to kind of explore other ways. Sometimes it's as simple as finding a friend or people you know or family to really give you a gauge. Now, I don't recommend it as a first area to go to because, well, your family or your friends, they may not be experts or they may not be familiar with your problems or your industry or any of that. If you have specific problems as a Asian American male in society, for example, well, not everyone's going to truly understand what that means or what issues you've gone through. And therefore, it's sometimes better to find people who are like you, who have experienced what you've gone through, or have, gone through your struggles and made it through and achieved success in where you want to achieve success. If it's money, maybe someone who's earning six figures or is a millionaire. And of course, you can't always find the best people. So what I tend to do is I try and find the best that I can. And therefore, sometimes it is just your coworkers or your friends or your boss or established people at your school that you know. And sure, they're not millionaires or they're not like the ideal candidates, but they're pretty darn good and they're better than just some stranger off the street. Now, the second thing you can do, if you kind of want to take the paid route, is of course go find paid coaches. And you can, other than paid coaches, there's a number of different people out there that can potentially help you out. There's also paid coaching groups. There's paid meetup groups on meetup.com. And those are a bit higher quality because you can find people who are more engaged, more willing and focused to participate. And of course, you can even just Google on any search engine, really, any type of peer group, search the phrase peer group and then your topic of interest, whether it's peer group, social anxiety, or peer group, making friends, or peer group, earning money. And the final bit of advice I would love to give is check out Facebook groups that use the same type of keywords in there, because out of any type of group I found online, Facebook groups are incredibly well engaged. There's always people commenting in there, and you will find people of similar interests. And feel free to send them email or message my way. You can find me at willyoulaugh.com. If you have found any interesting Facebook groups or groups that have really helped you, I am also someone who am on the lookout for some great groups. I'm already part of quite a few that take up most of my Facebook time, and those are the Art of Charm Challenge group. That is based off the podcast, The Art of Charm, which is like one of the top podcasts of all time. And to join that group, you basically sign up for their email challenge. It's a 7-day challenge, and they give you like one new thing to do every day. And they also give you a link to that Facebook group to join. But that takes up most of my time. There's a few other groups I joined. There's Real Man, Real Style. There's Tai Lopez's 67 Steps group. There's Tai Lopez's Book a Day group. And there's a few others out there. And mainly, it's a bunch of guys supporting each other, whether it's for fashion or it's for public speaking or learning and consuming knowledge and so forth. Toastmasters is a great group for me, and it's a great way to really consult and get real objective feedback from other people on how you appear in social settings rather than your own deluded beliefs. So now let's move on to consciously identifying your own excuses. Now, there are times and ways of identifying your own excuses, or at least improving the ability to do so. And the first way is to really identify excuses as they are. And what you're looking for are phrases such as, I can't do this because. Now, you may not say that aloud, but you may be thinking this phrase in your head. Ask yourself, look at your behaviors and look at your past day and your past week and ask yourself, when was the last time you said you couldn't do something because of something? Another phrase you could potentially use, or another behavior for that matter, is, when's the last time I wanted to do something, achieve a goal, whether it's a small goal or big goal, and when have I failed to take action on that? And those are usually the excuses and mental blocks that you can start uncovering. I'll go through my own life and kind of give you some examples, because I want to show you that I'm also kind of going through this process myself. I'm not some perfect being. I'm just maybe a couple steps ahead of where you are. So in the last week, I would say there's a couple things where I've kind of screwed up. One of them is failing to really ask any of my email subscribers from my email newsletter to, if they're interested in perhaps purchasing a product or coaching service or something or other from me. And really, I've been procrastinating for a long time, many months doing this because of a fear of being judged as someone who's only in it for the money, or fear of burning that person out, or offending them to a point where they stop being a fan or a subscriber or follower of mine. Now, on a logical perspective, that's quite preposterous because one email sent is not going to burn them out. If it is, they weren't real fans anyways, because I send maybe 1 to 2 emails already per week. So it's not like one extra email is going to destroy them. Just asking too. So that is one of my blocks because it's something I've clearly set a goal out for. I've written that goal down. I've said it out loud, yet I've failed to take action on it. I've made steps towards it. I've come all the way up to it, but I've failed to do it. So that's one way of identifying your own excuses and mental blocks. I'll give you another example of a mental block or excuse because maybe you aren't interested in starting an online business or anything like that. So you're not going to have that same problem. So here's another problem that may be more close to home for you. So another thing that I have constantly failed to do, and this one's less of a huge long-term procrastination play. This is something that I'll probably be able to get done much sooner, is I have failed to invite out a group of friends that I have made at my gym. And this is something that is one of my goals. It's been my goal for a decent while, and that is to start making friends and build a strong, even if it's a small, but a strong and small, solid group of friends. And just invite them out for some type of excursion outside of the gym. And I've identified this because this is something that I've crystallized, I've written down as a goal, and I've said it out loud. And yet I've failed to do it. I've gone to the gym with the intention in mind, and I've come very close to doing it. I've talked about it with them. I've asked them. I've gotten their phone numbers. But I've failed to completely execute and confirm a date and time. So if you're still struggling with identifying your excuses, I highly recommend writing your goals down, your short-term and mid-term and long-term goals down, at least once a week in paper and saying them out loud. Because by crystallizing and making clear your goals and then attempting to take action on them, or even if you don't take action on them, you will clearly identify what is stopping you, or at least identify what you should be doing that you aren't. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to fix, but at least you've identified and covered them. So mental blocks are a bit different from excuses. They're very similar, but mental blocks are more psychological. I believe that most of the things that are holding us back from achieving our success, not everything. Sometimes it's something out of your control, like excessive competition, people who are better than you genetically. But most of the time, it's your own psychological blocks that are holding you back. Because the knowledge is out there. The instructions and directions for how to do anything these days is out there online. People give it away for free. If not, they're in books, which you can check out at the library for close to free. So there's so much information on YouTube and other sources, podcasts. So usually the issue has nothing to do with lack of information or directions. It usually has to do with deep psychological issues that are holding us back. These include, and I've kind of hinted at them from my own examples, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, anxiety, fear of losing a fan, fear of offending other people, fear of being judged or seen as a despicable person. As you can tell, a lot of them are fear. Some of them are anxiety. Some of them are anger. Some of them are traumas of the past. it's one or the other or something else, but it's psychological. So mental blocks really mainly, they're excuses, but they focus on a primary psychological problem that is the core of what's holding you back. So to find your mental blocks and then, start fixing them, you just kind of have to dig into and ask yourself and really reflect. And this takes time, but find out why you have these problems. Why do you have these psychological blocks? And I think that's really the big issue that prevents most people from listening to the advice from successful people like Tim Ferriss or Noah Kagan or whoever else. They stumble. They stop because of these psychological blocks, not because of the instructions. They know you have to talk to this many people, ask them this, get this done. There's something else there. So now you've got all of this uncovered. How do you actually go about fixing it? I think I've experimented with a lot of things. The one thing that's kind of helped for me is tiny mini steps towards achieving your, moving towards those goals and moving towards that pain. And it could be as simple as, okay, there's 5 friends at the gym that I want to invite out, but I'm scared that they'll say no or think I'm weird or think I'm gay if I do this, or over eager or desperate. Those are usually my fears. And that's what makes me procrastinate. They may seem a bit preposterous, but to me, they aren't from a psychological standpoint. So what about reducing those goals a bit, or that behavior a bit? How about asking just one of them if they're interested, and ask them with a specific date in mind? That way you can move forward on this rather than just keep it going. And so, from there, some of my standard excuses will erupt like, oh, well, if they're such good friends, they should ask me, or why are they making this so hard for me? If I just mentioned it, they should pick a time and date themselves. Those excuses may come up, but you identify that they're excuses because you want this goal to happen. And if you want this goal to happen, you do everything in your control. And you know that you can push farther, even if, they're not doing their part. So in that sense, I've kind of reduced the fear and the traumatizing effect of that by reducing the amount of work I do and the amount of potential downside. I'm not asking all 5 of the people I want to invite out. I'm just asking one. And I'm, adding a little bit more oomph to it by having a specific date and time for this to occur. So can you kind of see how this is working? You're basically reducing and minimizing. And then once you get that first initial yes, maybe the first guy says yes, maybe the second guy says yes, but the first guy says no. But when you get that first initial small, quick win, you'll get that tiny boost of confidence, which will help you and give you momentum to ask the next guy. And so as soon as you can, maybe it's the next moment, maybe it's the next hour, or you may have to wait until the next time you're in the gym tomorrow to do so. You want to take that momentum, that boost of confidence you got from that initial yes, and then ask the next person. So that's kind of how you get the ball rolling. And now I kind of want to jump into the other example I used to kind of, apply this again and to really show you how it works. So for my validation problem, where I've been procrastinating for months, asking any of my email subscribers or followers if they would be interested in a paid online course or coaching program or ebook. What about I just send one email to one of my subscribers who is really engaged in what I have to say and really likes what I have to do? That way, it's not like I'm getting a flurry of people coming to me and, with their pitchforks and saying how horrible of a person I am for, selling out or anything like that. That potential downside doesn't exist because I'm not asking the entire group, and that potential for all that backlash doesn't exist because I've reduced the amount of downside and potential psychological negative impact on me by simply asking one person and also picking someone who is less likely to act in that way. And therefore, I'm still taking some action towards that goal. And then once I get that initial yes, I'll get that confidence. Maybe that person will say no. And the next 3 people will say no. But I'll keep testing. And then once you finally get that first yes or that second yes, maybe it's the third yes where you really get that true boost of confidence. Then you let that momentum build. And you don't let it die down or fade away. You take that momentum, and as soon as you can, you ask the next person. You build on that. I might start building the product from then. I might, get the initial sale and move from there. So that's kind of how it works. I'm not going to dwell too much on that example, but you get the point. Now, I've tested a bunch of other things and they haven't worked as well as I thought. So that's why I don't think I will include them in my tips to you guys. The only other thing I would say is that meditation in general has, on the fringe side, not excessively, but a tiny bit, maybe 5%, 10%, it has really helped me calm my emotions, be more in tune and aware of what psychological issues I have. And that can help in a lot of ways. It can help you identify and really hone in on how you're feeling in the moment and identify what psychological issue, which mental block is really holding you back. And then from there, you can start unpacking it and facing it. So in that way, it's helped. It's also helped in the execution of something I am scared of or anxious of. Even if it does exist, meditation and just being consciously aware of and leaning into those negative feelings, that also has really helped me actually take action, whether it's something where I fear rejection at a networking event or something where I'm just scared in general. It has still helped me take action rather than shy away and, chicken out. Now, it's not a perfect solution. Sometimes I still chicken out. Sometimes I still procrastinate quite a lot, but it does help. In particular, if I had to choose a style of meditation, I've tried a few, but mindfulness meditation is the style I recommend if that's what interests you. I mean, there's been hundreds of studies that have been published on PubMed in the last few years that have really contributed to the growth of mindfulness meditation as something that has been scientifically proven to help with your focus, your anxiety, your stress levels, your anger control, and your emotional stability. There's all these studies that kind of prove it. And if you just go to PubMed, which is the scientifically acclaimed search engine for scientific publications and studies, and you search mindfulness, or you can go to Google Scholar if you're lazy. Either one works. You can find tons of these studies to kind of prove it. And I will leave show notes with links to some of these studies, if I can, in the blog post edition of this podcast. So I'm going to cut off the podcast here, and I really hope it helped you guys out. I think, you don't need 100 methods. You don't need 50 tips on doing this. You need 1 or 2 methods that actually have been proven to work and that you'll actually do rather than procrastinate on. So that's it for this podcast. I highly recommend you sign up for my email newsletter. I share exclusive tips on there in my emails that I share nowhere else. So if you want value bombs like that, go ahead to my site, willyoulaugh.com, and there are a number of different email opt-in forms on my site where you can enter your email and you'll be signed up to my newsletter. I have placed them all over the site, so it's very easy for you to find. And that site is also my blog, so I share a lot of great posts, and you have the whole archive of my previous podcasts on there. So I really hope this helped, and so I would love if you would go and subscribe to this podcast, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode. Thanks for listening. Peace out.
Thank you for listening to Will's Personal Development Podcast. You can find more at willyoulaugh.com.